Hey sister, welcome back to the Daily Momship podcast, where we believe that mama knows best, and through intentional conversations, connecting you with industry leaders and the mother load of tools and resources, you can feel more empowered to mother the way that feels truest to you. This episode is all about bed sharing and co-sleeping. This is something I am so passionate about, bringing more education and resources to my community because it is a topic that I have really caught an incredible amount of heat for. I get countless questions about how to do bed sharing safely, and honestly, in our family, it looks a little different depending on the season, and we really rely on our intuition when it comes to our family sleep. But I realize how that isn't really the most helpful information, so that's why I want to bring in people that are more educated than me around this topic. Rachel Rianne on IG joins us for this episode and talks us through how to bed share safely, how biologically normal it is to bed share, and of course, myth busting. Rachel helps support families in their sleep journey and have realistic expectation about their child's sleep and shares so much of that topic on social media as well. I love her page and what she stands for, and I hope you love this episode too. Let's dive into the show. All right, Rachel, I am so excited to have you on the Daily Momship podcast to talk about something that I am so passionate about and something that I have taken real heat on social media, TikTok, Instagram, and I'm not the expert besides literally doing it myself with both my kids. So that's why I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today. Can you go ahead and just share a little bit about yourself, how you got into sharing all about co-sleeping and bed sharing and normal infant sleep and practices on social media, and you're helping moms all over the place. So just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Rachel, and I have been married for 4 years. I have two little ones. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And basically how I got into all of this is when my daughter was born, I suffered from postpartum depression and anxiety. I really struggled with my mental health after she was born. And a lot of that was due to the fact that I did not have realistic expectations of what it would be like to have a baby and a newborn when it came to sleep, and all of those things. So when she came into the world, I kind of had this expectation that she'd take these nice long naps, that I could put her in her crib and she would just sleep these long stretches. And I was like, oh yeah, I might be up once or twice in the middle of the night. Like eventually she'll sleep through the night by like 6 months, right? And that didn't happen. And so I started getting really stressed, and I felt like my life was completely out of control because I couldn't control her sleep. And so I really struggled with that. And it wasn't until months later, I went through a whole sleep training journey with my daughter, which now I openly talk about why I don't support sleep training on my page, and I help parents get sleep without sleep training. But I did end up going down that route because I was desperate and I didn't know what else to do. And so once I actually got out of that and I was able to accept those like the normal infant sleep, what's biologically normal for babies, was I actually able to really overcome that postpartum depression, that anxiety, and kind of start really thriving. And like, I found my jam in motherhood. So that's kind of what led me down that path. And it made me want to help other moms and educate other moms on it too. So.
Right. It's incredible the amount of pressure that you have on yourself as a mom around baby sleep because of what we're seeing on social media, right? And it's like, as soon as you know that your baby is normal, like, and let's just like take social media out of the equation, you would just be doing it, you wouldn't have all of these like outside pressures. But because there's posts all over the place saying, hey, is your baby sleeping through the night? They can be sleeping through the night 10, 12 hours, which is like unheard. Like, I don't sleep through the entire night ever in my life. Like, why do we put so much pressure on babies? And then when they don't do what we think they're supposed to do, they just do what babies do. Then we're like, we're the worst, and like you said, like you felt like you were desperate. And so you went to go do the thing that everybody else was doing. And then when you realized that didn't work and like what your baby was doing was normal, like took all the pressure off. Yeah. So that's why I wanted to have you on, because I love your page because it just talks about your baby's normal. Like, it's normal that your baby's waking up and needs things, and it's like, could you imagine like as an adult, you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, I want a hug from my partner that's laying right next to me, or I want a drink of water. And we're like, nope, you need to wait until 8:00 in the morning the next morning. Like, I can't, no, you don't get that.
Yeah.
It's just like so wild. But it's nice to hear that you are openly sharing your experience with sleep training also,
Yeah.
because I feel like first time moms, we just like will try it all, and try anything. And it's like through that trial and error, we figure out what works for us. Because I have friends that do sleep training and it like works amazing for them, because some moms just need that uninterrupted sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that mom. I'm like you. It feeds into my anxiety if
Mm-hmm.
I try to like do what everybody else is doing. So speaking on bed sharing normalcies and biological sleep norms for babies, do you have any statistics or like what's happening around the world? Because I feel like there's a lot of pressure in America, in the United States, around sleep training that there just isn't around the rest of the world. My parents are both first generation born in the US, and so bed sharing was very normal for us. And I didn't even realize all of the shame around it until I started sharing about it openly also. And then it was just like a free for all. Like people are like, you want to kill your baby, you want to sleep and you want to, suffocate your baby. I'm like, who in their right mind? Like, what mom? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Seriously. Okay, get away. I'm done rambling.
No, you're fine.
Tell us what people are doing around the world. I'm passionate about this, but I'm not an expert. So it's like that's why I need you here to like give us all the details. give it to us.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because, when you're looking at like the biological norm of babies and what's happened all throughout history and in other countries all over the world, it's funny how we really wouldn't be here as a species if bed sharing and co-sleeping was like inherently dangerous and was, something that was deemed like looked down upon or deemed as a bad habit. Because other cultures all over the world, I mean, you have like Southern Europe, Africa, Asia, all of these countries that it's just normal. It's completely normal to bed share and it's not seen as bad. And what's funny is actually in the US, a lot of moms still bed share and co-sleep. The difference is that either they're not openly talking about it because they're afraid of the backlash,
I
or
hate that. I literally hate that. Like
yeah,
more moms could do it safer. They could be in a safer situation if they felt safe to ask the questions, but it's not a safe place to ask questions.
no,
Social media is not safe. It's not safe to ask your pediatrician because literally everybody, it feels like everybody is against bed sharing. And
yeah,
the other thing about people around the world bed sharing, I always see the comment like about how maybe you have thoughts on this too, how it's like so like privileged to
mm,
have separate sleep spaces,
yeah,
but it's like also it's not just because you have these extra rooms. Like people around the world, they're not trying to find a they sleep with their baby because it's normal, not because they don't have all this extra space. They just want to sleep with their baby.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's like it doesn't have to be like even if they had another room, it's not like they would automatically go do that. It's just normal. It's just
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because there are the argument of, well, some people do not have, you know, the room to be able to have their baby sleep in a separate room. And I'm like, but there are also parents, and that's completely true, but there's also parents who do, like you said, they choose to make that informed decision to bed share, even if they would have space, because that's what they think would work best for their family. That's what my family chose to do with my son. And it's worked out great for us. And so many families who end up choosing to bed share and truly, either just because that's what they wanted to do or because they really didn't have a choice, either because of their sleeping arrangements or because that's their baby just literally would not sleep apart from them, because that's how babies are designed. They're not designed to be apart from mom. And we've seen this, with pretty much with every baby. I would say the majority, unless you have like one of those unicorn babies, who never need to become. But I feel like the majority of babies, usually they always sleep better sleeping on mom. They like to be held, like to be near mom, especially if you're a breastfeeding mom, because that's their source of nutrition and their source of comfort. So, looking at it, when you see that's how babies were biologically designed. They attach through the senses. So they want to see us and hear us and taste us and smell us. And so the bed sharing, it's just the natural way that they were designed to be with mom. And it's really sad that it's so demonized, especially in the US, just because so many moms do it and it's just not talked about enough. And it's there's not enough information, like you said. So it's really sad. And that's why I like to talk about it and talk about how to do it safely, because if you don't know, then you could be stuck in a situation that could put you and your baby at even further risk than if you know, were to have done it safely in the first place. Because when my daughter was born, that first like week of her life as a newborn, I at first was like, she's gonna sleep in her little bassinet next to my bed. And then when she was born, I was like, no, like I need her next to me. Like I was too anxious
Right.
to have her next to me. And so for that first week of life, she was in bed with me, but I had no idea actually how to do it safely. So
Right.
hopefully
But
I,
did you figure it out? Did you figure it out without a
yes. So
course?
it's
Because I mean,
funny.
I think that it's pretty intuitive. In my opinion, like if you just take away all of the outside noise and you just like tune everything out and you just tune into like what feels best, I feel like you just make this little cocoon. I don't know, for
Yeah.
me, like my body doesn't move. My body just stays right there. Yeah, my back hurts in the morning. Yes. But my body just like knows that she's there.
Yeah.
And for me, like with my second, we have a toddler in our bed and we have a baby, like an infant, and she had so much fluid in her lungs from the C-section for
Mhm.
some reason, like because when they're pushed through the vaginal canal, they get that good squeeze and everything comes out of their lungs and their stomach and all that stuff. So she had actually swallowed all that and inhaled it. And so she actually ended up we had to go to the hospital because she like stopped breathing. She was like choking. And even in the hospital when I had her for my C-section, they had her literally propped up in that little cube, they had her inclined, they had little towels on the outside. It was nothing like if you put that on social media, they'd be like, you're trying to kill your baby because there's towels and rolled up. Like that's how the nurses propped her up. So I was like, okay, well, we have to figure out how to do this at home because she can't lay on her back flat and you can't pay me enough to put her in a separate sleep space. I have to literally look and watch her take every single breath.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I know there's like so many courses and like ways to do it safely, but like honestly, like my mom, I'm the oldest of 6 kids. Like she never looked at a sleep training course.
Mhm.
So it's like, it's just so interesting.
It is.
I
And
just had
it
to
is
say all that.
funny. A lot of moms do instinctually just kind of know what to do. And I remember with my daughter, I kind of already, without really doing any research, I kind of instinctually had her kind of in my arm and I would curl up into the C position. And it was just like natural. When I actually did the research, I was like, oh, I was already basically doing it in the safe way. So it is
Right.
funny how it is such a natural instinct in mothers to do that. And when you even study like bed sharing moms, specifically breastfeeding moms, when they're with their baby and they actually start to link sleep cycles when they are with their babies. There's a documentary on Netflix called The Milky Way, and they actually talk about this a little bit, where babies will go into deep sleep and light sleep together when they're with their moms, and they're exclusively breastfeeding. So it's really interesting how like aware you really are of your baby when you are, you're doing it safely. And like I remember even with my kids, like the slightest little like noise or peep, I mean, like I would wake up. It wouldn't matter like how deep of a sleep I was in. You
Oh,
really do. There's this hormonal shift, and there's so many things that are shifting when you have a baby, but there's this big hormonal shift in this drive to keep your baby alive and nurture them all throughout the night and stuff. So it is really interesting when you actually do study it and you see that babies and moms almost they become like that one, like in that mother
right.
baby dyad. So it is really interesting to look into it.
Very in sync. So okay, so do you have like safety tips for bed sharing? Like if a mom is looking to
Mhm.
bed share with her baby, maybe she already is, she can go through this checklist of like things to make sure that her sleep space and like with partner or like whatever. What is the bed sharing safety checklist? And then also like for like a new mom, like she's pregnant, maybe about to have her baby, like what are the recommendations?
Yeah. So there's something called the Safe Sleep 7 by La Leche League. And that's kind of the main guidelines that are pretty good to follow. They also have a book. It's called Sweet Sleep by La Leche League. So that's a really good resource for new moms. And it actually goes over basically, it's the opposite of the sleep advice that we get in like the US and all of that with sleep training. It's the opposite. So it really helps set mom up for realistic expectations of what it's like to have a baby. Um, But yeah, so the safe sleep 7. So mom has to be a non-smoker. And even in pregnancy, it's suggested to that no smoking. Obviously sober, no drugs, safe sleep surface. So mattress needs to be firm. You don't want like pillows or blankets that are close to baby's face. You want to keep blankets like lower down. Make sure nothing's going over around baby's face. Baby needs to be healthy and full term. So it's not recommended to bed share with preterm babies. And then breastfeeding, exclusively breastfeeding is also part of the guidelines. And then baby needs to be on their back and then like lightly dressed. So not swaddled or anything that could restrict their arm movement so that if something did cover their face, they could, push things away.
Yeah, get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Is that all of them?
Yeah, that's the 7. So yeah, non-smoker, sober, breastfeeding, healthy and full term, baby on their back, lightly dressed, safe sleep surface.
Okay, and then so what if there's formula involved? Then what?
So there's not as much research done on formula babies and bed sharing. It's not recommended for exclusively formula babies to be in bed with mom. Just because when a mom is exclusively breastfeeding, there is just that different, like I said, that the sleep cycles link up. They're in more of that like connection. They become more of that one versus when you're formula feeding, baby's not constantly looking for the milk. They're not right up next to the breast. Whereas a breastfeeding mother, when you're bed sharing, you naturally keep your baby next to your breast. And baby's naturally going to stay next to the breast to be close to their food source. If you're formula feeding, they're not going to be close. They're not going to have that drive to stay super close to your breast. So it could lead them to kind of wind up in other positions in the bed that could be unsafe. So it's not recommended. However, I have worked with parents who do formula feed and they bed share. It is up to the parent to mitigate their own risk in that situation. I would say probably in the newborn phase, it would not be a recommended idea, but maybe if your baby's more mobile and they're a little bit older and that's something that you want to try and you feel it's safe for your family, then that's something that the family can decide to do probably. So.
Okay. And let's say you have a partner that doesn't really want baby in bed, or you feel like you want the baby to sleep with you, but you don't feel like your partner is a safe sleep partner for baby. Like they sleep heavy or they roll around a lot or like whatever, because like we're talking about being in sync with baby. Like your partner is obviously not breastfeeding the baby too. So like they don't have those like synced up sleep cycles. So like what are recommendations for maybe like a checklist for the partner, or like how do we navigate a conversation with a partner that doesn't want baby in bed for whatever reason, or like, just talk me through that.
Yeah. So I would say if you're going to bed share and you have a couple options, because some people will just have dad if dad is not going to participate in like being responsible, not in like a mean way, but like being responsible in the sense of like they might be drinking or smoking or doing things like that, and you're not comfortable with them in the bed with baby. Some parents do choose to have dad just sleep in a separate room for the night, and I know some couples, they really don't like that idea, but that is an option you can do. Otherwise, it kind of comes down to having a discussion with your partner, like, look, this setup is what's going to be best for our family and our family dynamic, and it's important to me that you help take responsibility in this. It's also important to make sure when your baby's very young and they're like a newborn, you can just keep baby on the side away from your partner. So you're in the middle, baby's on this side, your partner's on this side. So if for some reason you are worried that your partner's a heavy sleeper or something like that, you don't have to worry about them rolling over onto your baby or anything like that. And your body is there to kind of guard them. But I think it's interesting.
And that works from like ages, like what, like until they start rolling over, and then you can't have them like on the edge anymore, or like, and then what? And then what's another like, I don't know, I guess like a baby guardrail, like a guardrail for the bed?
Yeah, so you can get guardrails for the bed. I think there are certain ones that are probably like safety tested and not, but I do know lots of families choose to do that if baby starts rolling. But once your baby is more mobile, depending on your comfortability level, then between you and your partner. A lot of this depends on like you mitigating your own risk for your family and figuring out like, what am I comfortable with? Like right now at my son's 1, so I'm totally fine with him sleeping between me and my husband. We've never had any sort of issue. And I think once he became a little bit more mobile, especially when he was crawling and stuff, that like kind of worry definitely diminished, and I was a lot more comfortable having him there. And not to mention, if you are sleeping in like the C position, you're kind of right there with your baby. So even if, for me, I was like, if my husband were to even get too close or something, I feel like I would have known and I would have been able to tell.
Well, yeah, because like we just like, well, for me too, like I'm speaking for myself, but I just like any movement, any like a breath that was too long or too short, I'm like awake, you know?
Yep.
So I feel like that you're also able to like, you know, as long as you're not on any medication or having the smoking or the drinking, like you're 100% sober, which is also something that I do. Like I'm just the sober one, and that's just, you know, not like from any like any issue with alcohol, but like I designate myself as the one that is in the house that is always 100% coherent. So I feel like our kids sleep between us. We're like the bookends, and the kids just, I mean, now it's, I mean, I used to like, and I'm sure you're gonna advise against this, but this is just like us going through like River having sleep struggles and like breathing issues when she was extremely young. Like we used the sleeper things, you know, and we propped them up and having at an incline so she couldn't roll over. And again, like I wasn't sleeping very much at all, like any movement, sound, anything, like I was awake. Just because we had gone to the emergency room at 2 weeks old, she turned completely blue. But like I know those like DockATots and the Snuggle Me's and stuff, like I know you're gonna probably advise against those. I'm gonna just put it out there, like if you're a mom and you did it, like don't beat yourself up, because I did it too. Like we were just trying to figure out the best way for us to do what we needed to do, because she couldn't sleep flat and it was the only way she could sleep. And like we just did what we had to do. And, you know, parenting is like that. You don't always fit into every single guideline, you know?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you're just in survival mode where you just have to do what you have to do in order to make it through. And it's really funny because I mean, that even reminds me of like parents who get stuck in situations where their baby literally won't sleep unless like they're next to their body. And so you have these moms who are sitting up all night in like a rocking chair or on a couch trying to like get their baby to sleep. And and even they're doing it too because they're too scared to even bed share. And then you have these situations where your mom's falling asleep in like a rocking chair or on the couch, and then their baby falls down, and that's even more dangerous than just safely bed sharing next to the baby. So it is interesting because you have all these people who say, well, just keep yourself awake. And I'm like, well, you try doing that multiple times a night, you know, for however long it takes to get your baby back.
I mean, like this is like Navy SEAL training, okay? Like we already are up for 72 hours straight, okay? It is not for the weak, okay? But yeah, I mean, like honestly, sometimes it's just like you're in survival mode. You've got this kid that won't sleep unless they're on you. Like, and I did that too. Like you know, after my C-section, I've had 2 C-sections. I sat in my pregnancy pillow, rolled up like a donut, so that I was in this like there. I mean, there was no way she was rolling anywhere, because there's just like I'm in this cushy thing, and she's just laying on me, you know, because they're designed to sleep on you. Because if it wasn't that way, they wouldn't do it, you know. But yeah, I definitely slept upright a lot in the very beginning, and yeah, I don't even recommend for me, but like I had to do it, you know. You just got to do what you got to do. Okay, so let's debunk a couple myths. Okay. These, I have a bunch of questions and a few myths that were sent in from people in my community, from moms in my community. So the myth we want to debunk: they'll never not want to sleep with you. If you bed share, you'll never get them out of your bed, and they're going to be sleeping with you probably till college. Honestly, what do you think about that? What do we think?
Every time I hear this, I honestly makes me want to laugh, because I'm just like, there's no, like you said, there's no college kids or adults still sleeping in their parents' bed. They're not always going to end up in bed with you. And it's funny though, because even as adults, I actually find almost shifting the perspective a little bit at first is important, because even as adults, like we do feel safer if there is someone there with us a lot of the time. Like
I
even
was
with
just
my
gonna
husband.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, like you grew up to be a bed sharing person. Like you
Yes,
grew up to be a
you
bed sharing
did.
adult. And
Yeah.
you're like, when you wake up and your person isn't there, you're like, hey, where'd you
Mm-hmm.
go? What's going on?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
imagine teeny tiny baby waking up and being like, hey, where's mom? Like,
Yeah.
gosh.
Well, and I'm a
No.
full grown adult. And if I feel even I feel safer if my husband's there. If he's out of town or something, I'm like, this doesn't feel normal. And you have tiny babies and toddlers who can't meet their own needs and they're fully reliant upon you. It's even more, it's even completely different for them. So I think shifting that perspective at first initially is important to understand like we all crave that connection and we all crave that comfort in the middle of the night. And them sleeping with you is that form of comfort and safety to know that they're okay. But you can also always make changes if your situation's not working for you. And that's kind of
Right.
that funny thing when I always hear like you're making a rod for your own back or this is creating a bad sleep habit. And I'm like, there's no such thing. I'm like, it's only what's sustainable for your family. And if bed sharing is working for your family, then by all means keep doing it. If nursing to sleep is working, then keep doing it. And if these things are starting to become straining on you, then you can make those changes and you can shift. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy by any means, but you
Right.
can do it. And so I think that's important to understand because I'm like, of course, at some point, eventually they're going to sleep by themselves. I was like, but when you want to make that change is completely up to you. That could be, when they're a baby, that could be when they're 3, it could be when they're older, depending on if you want, how long you want to bed share for. So, and some kids will naturally just say, hey, mom, I want to go sleep in my own bed.
Right.
And
Yeah. Like I never remember my parents like kicking me out of their room, but I'm the oldest of 6 kids and there was only ever one baby in the bed besides when my mom had twins. Like, and I don't even know how they did it. Like I don't know how they did it. And my mom's like, she's like a saint. Like I just don't know like how they did it.
yeah.
Anyways, it's just like, and that's the thing is like, there's so many ways to be a good mom. There's like a million ways to
Mhm.
be like, you got good mom over here. There's like so many ways to get there.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it the way that somebody else is doing it for it to be right for you,
Yeah.
Like I feel like with the whole sleep training thing, like at 8 months old with my first, I tried to do like putting and not sleep training. I didn't even know what sleep training was
Yeah.
because I was like going through my own shit, honestly. Like in my first experience as a mom, like it was rough.
Yeah.
I think me and my husband both had like he was definitely going through some like postpartum depression and like stuff with work. It was just like a huge shift for us, First kids are rough.
Yes, they
And
are.
it was like beautiful and magical and all of that, but also extremely rough. And
Yeah.
like I for sure had postpartum anxiety and I had no idea what that was. I
Mhm.
only ever knew what depression was, but I didn't feel depressed. It was definitely anxiety. And I know that now after having my second. But I tried to do like putting her in the crib and letting her cry because she needs to cry it out. She needs to be able to put herself to sleep,
Mhm.
and I'm just like this, and what I would find myself, and I've shared this before, is I would put her in the crib and leave the room. I would nurse her and lay her down, and if she woke up, if she was asleep, I would nurse her to sleep, and then I would try to lay her down, and if she woke up, I would just leave her in there because that's what I thought I had to do, because
Mhm.
I'd been like pressured from all these people that were not her mom, which I
Mhm.
realized my
Yep.
input is the most important, and it's like everybody else saying you need to let her cry, when all those people forgot what it was like to be a mom of an 8-month-old and what that does to your heart and to your stomach. And they
Yep.
just think it should be so easy. So I would put her in there and I would watch her on the monitor. I would sit outside of her bedroom door on the floor crying with
Mhm.
with a knot in my stomach. Like I had to throw up, like it made me so sick. And I would just watch her on the monitor and she's just screaming and holding out for the door or looking at the little light on the monitor that was up high. And then it came to the point where she still needed me. She just knew I wasn't coming.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
she would sit there and she would just look at the monitor, or she would lay down with her eyes just open and I could see her blinking and she's just laying there. Like that is just sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it
It's
really is. And
awful. And it didn't last long. And I never did it again with any of my babies. Every peep, even if they slept in the crib, I'd go in there, I'd nurse her to sleep. And then it just became like, then they're all sleeping in my bed again. But that's just, it's a season. It's a
yeah.
season that will end eventually.
Yep. Yeah, and I think because I remember going through that with my daughter too, and it was just Oh, it was absolutely like traumatic and just horrible. And I'm like, if you feel that way as a mom, you're sitting there at the door, and I remember just like crying and wanting to go get her. And if you feel that way, you
Right.
need to just listen to those instincts and
Listen
go
to
get your
your
baby, because they're there
gut.
for a reason. And
100%.
it's just really sad to me, the amount of times if a mother is struggling with sleep, it's just automatically put your baby in a crib and let them cry it out, and that's your solution. And I'm just like, there's so many more options out there for mothers, and that is such a like one way of thinking, and a very, you never know what a family situation is, and that could be extremely traumatizing for some families, who go
Right.
through something like that, and they have their babies just scream and scream and scream for hours. And it's really sad that that's the automatic like thing that we go to in our
Yeah.
society, of like, oh, it's just, cry it out, or you just wait it out and you never sleep again. And I'm like, there's a balance there, and it
Yeah.
is a season. And I think that's like something that I had to learn to accept, especially as a first time mom. Like, eventually I will get more sleep. Eventually
Yeah.
they will night wean. Eventually they will be in their own bed. Like my daughter, she sleeps in her own bed, and she doesn't nurse through the night anymore. And my son, who, I mean, he still sleeps in bed with us, he still nurses, but I'm like, I know eventually he will stop too. So it's
Yeah.
important to remember that. And it makes that season almost a little bit more sweeter. And you're able to
Yeah.
enjoy it a little bit more when you can remind yourself, like, okay, this isn't permanent. I'm not always going to
Right.
be in this situation. And I'm not always going to
Mhm.
feel like this. Because it can feel like forever when you're in the thick of it sometimes. Like, it's never going to
Totally.
change.
Totally. And it just like, I think just like what you said, like if you, which is something that I really believe, like if you, like nobody is going to be connected to your baby the way that you are. And we have this innate ability to know what is right for our baby. Like when your stomach is in knots, when the little hairs on the back of your neck stand up, that is your intuition speaking to you. That is your instinct kicking in. And I feel like as a society, we've just gotten so used to telling moms not to listen to that.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
don't do that. That's not right. You need to follow these guidelines to a T. You need to do the sleep training. It's not going to affect the relationship at all. It's not going to affect attachment. It's not going to do all, it actually fosters attachment. I've literally
Mhm.
seen that
Yeah.
that headline and I'm just like, this is so this is so scary that this is what moms are being told. Literally like disconnect, and it's like we already do that so much. You tell women to get back into the workforce at 6 weeks postpartum, like you're literally still bleeding.
Yeah.
Get back out there, just put your kid in a daycare. And I get it that some
Mhm.
moms got to do what they got to do, but it's like that's just the societal norm. Like put your baby in a room and let them cry and don't be upset about it. They'll get used to it. This is actually fostering attachment.
Yeah, it's
That
really
just
sad.
freaks me out.
Well, and then so many mothers wonder why their breastfeeding like supply just tanks when they're told to
That's
get
the other
their
thing.
4 or 5 month old babies sleeping 12 hours a night without nursing. And I'm like, they're not
Right.
designed to do that. I'm like, there are those some babies who do naturally just start sleeping like long stretches through the night, but the majority of babies don't. And
Yeah.
milk supply is meant, they're meant to nurse every couple hours to keep that up. So, I mean, I've worked with families who their milk supply tanks because they went through a sleep training program and got their baby to sleep through. And then they had to start doing formula when that's not something that they initially wanted to do. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, yeah, because you went these super long stretches. And so your body is saying, okay, we don't need to make as milk now. And that
Supply
can,
and demand, right.
yeah. So it's really funny how it's just our society sets it up that it doesn't support mothers and babies at all in the way that they are meant to be supported postpartum and
Right.
sleep, with breastfeeding. There's so many things that work against them. And so it's like, I never
Right.
blame moms for any of this because I went through it myself. So I totally get it. And I relate to
Of
moms,
course. Yeah.
but I'll say that like, I'm not mad at any moms. I don't blame any moms. I am blaming, the society, the sleep training culture that pushes so much of this on moms,
Right.
when it doesn't need to be pushed so heavily the way it is.
Yeah. And it's like, even with all that said, like, I just want to like make it clear, like always 100% mom knows best. That's like
Yeah.
what I think. And so if you feel like you need sleep training, then just, do the sleep training.
Hmm.
But if it causes you more stress, then it might not be working and you have other options. And that's why I have you here to like
Yeah.
talk about this stuff. It's because if you feel like you wanted to try sleep training and it's not giving you the outcome or making you feel the way you want to feel as a mom going through this season, then you have other options. If you want to use formula, and you want to do sleep training, like more power to you. You have to find what works best for you, because if you can't show up in the best version of yourself that's possible, then you're not showing up as the best version of your baby's mom. And like that's what's important. We need to be able to pour into ourselves the way that we want and need, so that we can show up the way we want to for our family. Sometimes that includes sleep training, sometimes that includes formula, sometimes that includes a mix of everything, you know? And so I just think that there are, I mean, just from like what I've seen, it just feels like the things that are most biologically normal are the things that are shamed the most.
Yes,
like nursing through the sleep, like rocking to sleep, like bed sharing, like exclusively breastfeeding in public. It's like those are the things that society has chosen to shame and judge and really like, I don't know. It's just like those are the things I feel like that need to be talked about more in this kind of space, because those are the things that are being shut down. Like everything is okay. Like find what works for you, but like these things that feel normal that are being deemed a bad habit are still normal, and you can do them if you want to. And there are benefits to them.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah, and I think it's hard because, you know, I've had, and I think you're 100% right when it comes to moms just needing to do what works for them, because I've had moms who, you know, they've done what they would consider to be sleep training, and they're like, it was fine, like it wasn't traumatizing for our family, that my kids responded really well to it. And I'm like, if that's the decision that you made and that worked for you, then great, like that's fine. But then you also have the parents who go through that and it wasn't that way for them, and so then they're stuck in this, well, now I don't know what to do, because this wasn't working for my kids, it doesn't feel right to me, but this is the only option I have, and everything else, like you said, that's considered the norm is shamed upon. So then that's where you have to find that balance between like what works for you, and you know, and it's not always what everyone else says you have to do. So, yeah.
And how do we, if let's say mom is pregnant, gonna have a newborn, and you are currently bed sharing with a toddler, this is what I did too. How do you bring a newborn into that shared space with a toddler and a partner? How does that work? What are recommendations for that?
Yeah, so if you want to bed share with both, it's recommended not to have toddler and baby next to each other, just because from it's not studied as much as how like siblings kind of interact with each other throughout sleep. So usually the safest option is to have you, it's just like you and your partner. You'd be in the middle, toddler would be on the other side, and you'd be in the seat position around your baby with your baby on the other side. So that way you're kind of a barrier between your toddler and the baby. And then if you have a partner, partner would either be on the other side of the toddler, or you would have, oh, my hand positions are showing this.
I don't like looking so closely at your straight lines.
Or you'd have your toddler on like the edge, and then your partner, you, baby. So you and your partner would be in the middle of the bed, and toddler would be on the side with your partner, and the baby would be on your side with you. So those are two options to do it. And then you could just choose, like I said, on when you're comfortable with allowing baby and toddler to sleep next to each other. That would probably be different for a lot of families depending on age factor, but when they're little, it's definitely safer to keep them separated. Or you could move your toddler to another sleep space and have your partner co-sleep with them while you co-sleep with the baby. That's what me and my husband do. So we usually start off the night in our bed, and then our son comes into our bed when he wakes up first, because he sleeps on a floor bed in his own room. Then he comes into our bed at his first wake up, and then my daughter sleeps in her bed. And when she wakes up, my husband just gets up and goes and sleeps with her for the rest of the night. So that's kind of our setup, and that works great for us. So
I don't even want to share like what our setup looked like, because it's like seriously Tetris. Like that's like if I could, it was like human body Tetris. And again, don't recommend. We were in straight survival mode. And now it's like I've got almost 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and it's just like a free for all. It's like me and dad are bookends, and those kids are just in the middle. And that's kind of how it always was. But we just had them like separated by pillows. Can I say that? We were separated by pillows, and like, toddler was like at the end of the bed, but like with pillows at the end, so she didn't like fall off, and she was like horizontal, and so they were never like next to each other like this. They were like this.
Yeah.
If that even makes sense. It was like me and then little baby and then dad and then the toddler was like down here. We have like a California king, so there was plenty of like room. We just like never had them in the same direction of each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, whatever. It worked. It worked for us.
Whatever works.
Yeah. And then what is the earliest age to safely co-sleep? Personally, we did it from day one. So
Yeah, and that's the answer. You can do it literally from day one. Is so as long as you're following the Safe Sleep 7, baby is healthy and full term, then yeah, you can absolutely start co-sleeping from day one, and you can do it as long as you want.
and then also like with the bed up against a wall, like in a corner, so we've got two walls on the bed. Is that recommended or no? For the baby, like,
So if the bed's like push up into a corner of,
yeah.
So if that's the case, you would need to make sure that there's no gaps between, because actually the number one reason for babies passing away in any type of bed sharing incident is not a mom rolling over onto baby. It's actually if a baby would to get lodged between like the headboard and the mattress or a wall in the mattress. So it is important to make sure that any of those gaps, if there was gaps, they're like tightly packed, they're filled, and it's a safe sleep surface that way. Or you'd sleep on where the wall is to protect baby in that way. So those are the two options. Or you can move the mattress to the middle of the room too. Some people decide.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking maybe that was like safer to have it on, in the corner so that they can't like roll off the bed. Because once they start like moving around, I feel like they go like wherever. But I guess that makes sense. Like, so pack it with like a towel or something, or like how do you pack it?
So yeah, I usually with my son, I always use a towel. I mean, because he's on a floor bed right now, it's in the corner of his room. So you could do something to make sure there's no gap there, and just anything to make sure that that's a flat surface and baby could not get wedged between that in any way.
So it's just like if they could like fall in there pretty much, right?
Yeah, you don't want them to fall into between like that mattress and the headboard at all.
Okay, so
some people,
space to fall in
if you had like a sidecar cot or something that's like you almost get like it's like a crib but it has the side off of it, you could push that against the corner of the bed and then put your bed next to it, so that way it's like the crib and then your bed, so baby is still right next to your bed and you're still on like the same sleep surface, but you don't have that danger of like the wall or anything like that, because you'd have like the crib rails up protecting baby. And that's something that parents choose to do, is like a sidecar cot. It's kind of a balance between bed sharing and then baby also kind of having their own spot too. So that's something that some parents choose to do.
Yeah, that's a good option. Okay, and so this was a question from, which I just think is like so funny, but I had to throw it in here because I know it's like a common one. So she doesn't understand how to have a sex life and co-sleep in the same bed.
Yeah, so I think it's funny because I've talked about this before on my Instagram, and I get so many like comments thinking that it's literally impossible to have any sort of sex life or intimacy when you are bed sharing. And they're like, and I'm like, there's a lot of ways that you can go about it, because
just so many places to do it besides your bed, people.
Yeah. I'm like, you don't
I don't know how we got pregnant with our second. How, when, where?
You're not confined to just one spot. Like there's many other places, and you don't always just have to do it at night. Like there's other times during the day, if baby is taking a nap or someone you trust, like a grandparent or something like that, is watching the baby for an hour and you're able to sneak away with your partner. Like there's lots of ways that you can go about that. So it just takes creativity. And I think also being accepting, like, you may not be as spontaneous. Sometimes you have to be like, okay, tonight, as soon as the baby falls asleep, it's go time.
Laundry room.
Exactly.
I just had to throw it in there because I know a lot of people, I don't know if whoever asked this is pregnant or just doesn't bed share and like just can't imagine it. But I feel like, again, now that I'm thinking about it. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. We all bed shared. I don't know when, I don't know how or where. My parents, but we have a very big family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
there's lots of families that are super big, and like a lot of the times they all practice bed sharing. And I'm like, I don't think that the sex life is an issue here.
right. Yeah, that's definitely not being inhibited by
No.
the fact that you're sleeping with your baby.
No.
So it's just like this weird thing, like, and I've talked about this with my husband too, that I get so many negative comments. Like if I get a reel that goes viral about
Mhm.
bed sharing,
Mhm.
people, your poor husband, you're like,
Yes.
oh, my husband would never. I'm like, what part of like, does it look like my husband is unhappy? Like,
Yeah.
and then even for him, he would say like, what, like, I want the kids in our bed. Like
Yeah.
that's something that I want too. It's not just like only mom, like there's not this like world where only moms want their babies in their bed. Like
Mhm.
dads want the babies close by too, and I don't think that that's like talked about.
Yeah.
So yeah, like get
My
creative, people.
my husband, he loves like co-sleeping with our daughter because it's like, you know, he's like, she's asking like for me and she wants me to comfort her. And he's like, and he knows she's not going to want it forever. And there's going to be a night where she wakes up and she doesn't call her daddy. And so
Right.
it's that thing for him where he does like it. And it's like makes him feel good and feels like he can offer that safety for her. And, we've talked about before, neither of us have ever felt like bed sharing had intimacy whatsoever because both of our, I mean, like, you gotta get creative, and there's so many other places and there's other times where you can be intimate, and it doesn't just have to be confined to a bed at night right before you fall asleep, like,
Right.
and so it's just funny to me whenever people talk about that, and I'm like, my husband's actually very happy with our sleep setup, and we're all getting pretty good sleep because of it. So
Right.
I don't think he has any type of issue. And I think it's hard because there are some partners who really do not like the co-sleeping, and
Yeah.
I mean, it comes down to kind of looking at your relationship and being like, sometimes, when you're in a relationship or when you're a parent or anything like that, you sometimes just have to make a compromise with what's best for everybody and not always
Right.
putting your needs above everybody else, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah. 100%. And I think just to touch on one other thing, and like one day your daughter's probably going to wake up and not call for dad, and I think that just going back to when you are able to accept your season that you're
mhm.
in as a mom, like whatever that looks like, it allows you to appreciate and just let it be a little bit sweeter because it's going to end. And I think that
Yeah.
perspective, like as a second time mom, I look back on some of the experiences I had as a first time mom, and I was so stressed out about these things that just weren't going smoothly or like whatever. And it's like, it was so fast. It goes so fast. And the old ladies, they say that to you and you're like, oh God, like you don't remember. It feels like it's going so slow. And it feels like both. I feel like motherhood is this weird thing that you can feel all these experiences and all these emotions all at the same time. It goes so fast and it feels so long sometimes. Some days are just so long. But I think by sharing what you do, sharing all of the things that are normal about baby sleep, moms are able to look at those things and read them and be like, okay, I'm not the only one up at 2 and 3
Yeah.
and 4 and 5 and 6. And, I'm not the only one, and this is normal. There's nothing wrong with my baby. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me comforting and supporting my baby to sleep every single time she wakes up. Yes, I'm a mom bee right now, but
Mhm.
it will end, And I think that just being able to, which is really hard, sometimes to accept the season that you're in, because some of them are really hard. Being able to accept where you're at and accept the circumstances that you are in gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to find the sweetness in it, like you said.
Yeah.
And I like that. It doesn't last forever. None of it, the good or the bad, right? As
Yep.
soon as it starts to feel easy, some other thing happens and you're like, oh my gosh, now we got to deal with this for a couple weeks or months or whatever. For me, I feel like some days she wakes up, like I just nursed her to sleep. No, this is
I love
not,
it. It's perfect.
this is not the safe sleep 7 over here, but I don't think an office chair counts, but, we have no sleep schedule. They literally sleep wherever they land. They don't take naps. I relinquished control over that, you know, when my first daughter was going through all of her stuff. I feel like moms clutch so hard into controlling the sleep because they feel like they don't have control over a lot of other things, you know. Your body is changing, hormones are changing, your support and your friendships and your ability to just leave the house and go to Target without even thinking about it. All of that stuff is so out of your control, it feels like. You know, like, when am I going to get back to feeling like how I used to? When am I going to get back to doing the things that I wanted to? And when those things kind of feel out of grasp, it's like, I'm going to clutch onto this one thing. And that is the schedule, the sleep schedule, the sleep. You must take all these naps at this exact time. And if it doesn't, you know, then, you know, I don't know. It's like, I feel like that we're like white knuckling the sleep schedules because everything else, but I feel like it wouldn't be normal if everything went smoothly as a mom. It wouldn't be normal. You would be a unicorn because it's supposed to be a lot of change. It's a huge transformation.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I even remember, like, that was the thing with my daughter was, okay, I feel like my whole life is just completely changed, flipped upside down. And I can't do what I want when I want like I used to. I can't, you know, I've lost out. I'm not in control of when I get to sleep because it all depends on how long she sleeps and all these things. So I'm like, if I could just get her on a good sleep schedule, if I could get her taking long naps, I feel like then I could get part of my life back. I could get part of that normalcy back. And so I was, you know, listening to all these things like, this is what she had to do. She needs to take these 2 hour naps. And when she wasn't falling into that category, I kept feeling like I'm not able to do anything I want to do. I'm not able to, like, I'm either doing something wrong. And it just led to this spiral of me trying to control something that I literally could not control, which is just going to lead you crazy. It's going to make you crazy because we can't control our baby's sleep at all. And sometimes you just have to accept that. And I remember just going into having my son second time around, having a completely different perspective. And the amount of like, I mean, just, I was so much more like mentally just healthy. And I handled everything so much better, even with having an energetic toddler. I remember my son went through a period where he was like waking up like every hour in the beginning of the night. And while it was frustrating sometimes, I remember just, it wasn't like a big deal. I wasn't overthinking it. I wasn't like, what did I do wrong with the schedule today that makes him do this? Like, why did I, you know, does he need to learn to self-soothe? And that's why he's waking up after every hour. I wasn't even thinking about that. You know, it was just like, okay, it's a little frustrating. Let me go in, nurse him back to sleep for 10 minutes. And then I could roll away again and finish watching a show or whatever else I was doing before I went to bed. And eventually he just stopped doing it. And, you know, he would give me at least like a 3-hour chunk at the beginning of the night. And so I think sometimes it is just accepting that season, like you said, and really releasing that control and being like, at some point, this is just going to end. And it might feel really hard. Sometimes it is hard. But that doesn't always mean that, you know, it's bad and that you're going to be like this absolutely forever. So yeah.
I think that also, like, I'm just like thinking about like things that the sleep world kind of capitalizes on is like the time change and traveling. And like, for us at least, time change, like, we go back to California and it's a 2-hour time change. We don't even think twice about it. Like, if they go to sleep early or go to sleep late or wake up early or wake up late, like, it literally is not a concern. And it's like such a source of stress for people, for moms, you know? And it's like, and also like with the time change, even for an hour, like there's entire workups of like how you need to shift your entire sleep schedule and your wake windows and your this and your that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, seriously, does it affect you that much? The time change for 1 hour, like, you eventually adjust, like, just take the pressure off of, now I've got to shift everything back in 20-minute increments over the next 2 weeks so that it all lines up perfectly with, that's literally like,
and even if you do that, it may not work out.
I know, like, and you just stress yourself out, like, trying to, like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Anyways, it's just like so crazy to me.
Yeah. Well,
like, I get it. Like, some people want that schedule. They like it. But for me, it was a source of anxiety and stress and wanting to throw up. So
for lots of
you would work for you.
Yeah. And I think I like, cause like, I like the perspective of you cannot always control your child's sleep, but you can control your reaction to it. And, when it came to like my daughter, she would have this period where she would wake up at 5:30 for like months. It was just brutal. Eventually she stopped because I figured out she was a low sleep needs kid. And so we ended up, I remember thinking like, okay, well, if she wakes up at 5:30, I could either get really frustrated at this, or I could choose to just make the best of the situation and get up and read books and just rest in bed with her. And once I had that mindset shift, then I realized that like, oh, okay, this really isn't that big of it. Like, yeah, I'm tired, sure, but this isn't that big of a deal. And she eventually just stopped waking up. And so, I mean, sometimes you really do have to think like, I can't control how many times they wake up tonight. They could wake up 0 times, they could wake up 10 times, but I can control how I react to that. And I can control how I choose to respond to them. Am I going to be frustrated, or I'm going to handle it with, grace and patience with them, and understanding that they just need me for comfort. So yeah, I think the mindset shift is very big.
Yeah. And it can have a profound effect on your experience as a mom.
Yeah.
Like right now. Sorry, just stay calm. Okay, so going back, what would be your number one piece of advice you would give to your past self as a first-time mom?
Yeah,
it's a question I ask everybody that comes on the podcast. So I want to hear, what's your first-time mom experience to yourself?
Yeah,
advice.
To let go of the control, that I can't control everything would definitely be it. Because that was what I was so consumed with, trying to control everything with my daughter, that I became obsessed. And it makes me sad because I missed out on like enjoying that sweet baby phase with her, because I was so consumed with the sleep schedules and getting her to sleep through the night, and constantly researching baby sleep, which kind of led me down the path I am now. So I guess it all worked out in a way, but I was just consumed with it. And so if I look back now and just realize like I just let go of that control and just truly enjoyed my baby, and wasn't worried so much about her sleep, and just accepted my life as a new mom and all the craziness and the change and the chaos that came with it, it would have been so much more of an enjoyable experience. Like it was a second time around. I really got to enjoy the baby phase with my son because I wasn't concerned about all that stuff. And I just embraced that he needed me all the time and he wanted to nurse all the time. And I was prepared for it. So I think just letting go of that control, I wish I would have done that. And that would have saved me so much heartache.
Right. Yeah, totally. So in your current season of motherhood, this is the next question that I ask all my guests, is what is your go-to mantra to get you through hard times? So mantra, like a mantra, but mom style.
Yeah. So the one is hard doesn't mean bad. And I think Emma's for Mama came up for this. She's on Instagram. I think she's the one who came up with it. I'm not entirely sure if it was floating around before that, but I heard that and I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a good statement, because just because you're going through a season of life that feels super hard, feels really challenging, doesn't mean that, it's bad. Doesn't mean that it's something that needs to be like, you're constantly feeling like you're just struggling through and feeling like you're not gonna make it out, because we all go through hard seasons as mom, and having that mindset, like just because it's hard doesn't mean that this is something bad, really helps me in those moments, or just those hard days that come, those days where you feel like bedtime can't get there soon enough.
Right.
I think really does help. And then it will pass is a big one, because like you and I've talked about already a couple times, like all of the seasons of life, babyhood, toddlerhood, all of that, it all comes to an end and it goes by so fast. I feel like my second was like just born and he's already like almost 13 months. And I'm like, how did that happen?
I know.
So it is crazy to think about that and be like, the newborn phase went by so fast with him. And I'm like, my gosh, like all of these hard seasons when I thought, like we went through some kind of gas issues with him in the beginning. I remember being up a lot in the newborn phase and feeling like, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. And it ended. And it does, yeah. It all goes by really fast.
It's like, you get forged in the fire, it's like if you were to see like a flower pop up through a crack in the cement, it's like, can you imagine if that flower was just like, oh no, it's too hard. Like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like keep growing. I'm not gonna like push through this dirt and cement to like bloom. It's like through every hard season, like you become a different version of yourself along with the newest version of your child. It's like you're growing with them. And just like they go through like, I hate the term of like sleep regressions because it's actually like a mental leap, like they're like taking something that's really positive, like your child's brain is growing or like whatever, and then like putting this negative spin on it. But like as your child is growing and changing and evolving, so are you, like you are a different mom with your second baby than you were with your first because you have all these growing pains underneath your belt. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for sharing all of the tips for safe bed sharing and co-sleeping and making us feel normal, especially moms that have tried sleep training. I always find that like the best bed sharing accounts have like come from their own sleep struggles and their trials through sleep training themselves. And so it's nice that you have a little bit of experience with everything, especially supporting moms in what can seem like a very challenging, hard, but not bad season. So I know that you're helping moms on an individual level as well. Can you share where moms can find you and get support, and what are you offering right now as services? Just pimp yourself out here for a sec.
Yeah. So my main right now social media platform, you can find me on Instagram, is just Rachel Rianne. And then my website is rachelriannesleep.com. So that's where they can go if, someone's wanting one-on-one support to work with me and kind of work out some of their sleep struggles. I also offer a toddler course for parents who have toddlers who maybe want to move away from bed sharing and work more towards independent sleep in a way that's, very gentle and responsive. So yeah, those are some of my big things that I offer to everyone. And so, yeah, but my main thing that I talk about. So
great. I'm going to have all of those links and everything in the show notes too, so people can just easily get in contact with you. Make sure you guys follow her on Instagram. Rachel, thanks so much for being here and chatting with me today.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Mom Tribe podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode all about bed sharing and co-sleeping with Rachel. Go ahead and give her a follow on IG. But before you do, make sure that you rate and review the podcast and share with a mama friend who is interested in bed sharing or co-sleeping. And let me know what you think of this episode. Tag me on IG or leave me a comment on my most recent post about the latest episode that you've watched. I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you soon.